Hey guys, what's up? This is Owen Shiels for RunOnce.com, here with Slahser, aka Hackpod, and we are here with the final part of this Zoom tournament. So if you want to watch the other parts, they're either on Slahser's page or our RunOnce YouTube page. So let's get cracking. Aces, always nice to see.
Yes, very nice.
Okay, let's see what happens. So we make it 6 big blinds from 2. Yeah, fine. Just as a note, when you're playing this deep, min raising, and unless you have specific reads on the big blind, you almost never want to be making it min raise from the small blind.
Yeah.
Even if someone's tight, I'm usually making it 2.5x. If I'm playing kind of the correct strategy here, which is probably to have like some raises, some limps, raises, my raise size is probably going to be 3.5x, which is bigger than I think most recreationals go. But it just makes a lot of sense to be giving the big blind a bad price when they get to play in position the whole hand. It doesn't make quite as much sense to put a lot of money in, but you should be doing it with a relatively strong range. Anyway, we have aces, so who cares? He calls. We get really like a nothing flop. So by a nothing flop, I mean he very rarely hits this. I don't have a problem with how you play it. You make it small, which I think is the correct bet sizing. I just wondered if you'd ever considered checking behind here.
Yeah, I think checking also makes sense.
Yeah, okay. It's just I wondered if you had considered checking behind here, because a lot of people, they see aces and they're like, okay, I'm never going to check. But he just has nothing so often. I think occasionally he has 8-9 suited or Jack-8 suited, and we give him a free card. But most of the time he has King-Queen offsuit, and we just kind of want to allow him to perhaps hit something, or at least get one bluff out of him. This bet just it gets some value, obviously, but I think checking behind makes a decent amount of sense in this specific spot.
We don't have that much ICM pressure right now, but if we had more, it would also make sense to sometimes when you have top pair, top kicker, to check the flop and just control the pot size, especially at final tables.
Yeah, I mean with aces not quite so much, because he's going to have top pair here at least some. But I think it's just, I'm not saying that you should check back here. I'm just saying that it's definitely a consideration that we could take into account. And if you do work with Pio, on flops where you don't get to bet much, and this is a flop where we do get to bet much, but theoretically on a board that we don't get to bet much, aces is a check back a lot, because you don't really have to defend against much. With queens you're defending versus ace and king coming, whereas with aces he either has a draw or hits his set or nothing. Anyway, he folds. Queen 10 suited. We just flat call. I kind of prefer a 3-bet. Now we get to put ICM pressure on. It's a really decent hand to be 3-betting with. And we kind of take... When you're playing from the small blind, I think you should have a flatting range from the small blind as well. There's a lot of people who play no flatting range. Yeah. But with a hand like Queen 10 suited, it plays pretty well. We do benefit from getting immediate folds straight away. We can fold him off some equity. If he's opening King 9 offsuit, which has really decent equity versus us, if we get him to fold that hand, or Ace 6 offsuit, if we get him to fold all those hands, that's pretty big for us.
So I think one thing I'm thinking here is that I have been pretty aggro with my 3-bets. So because I'm not sure how long it is, but because I had 3 rounds where I 3-bet a lot, I might be just a bit more cautious now, because I yeah, they might just easily
Yeah,
get
I think the point here is that, like, look at C blue orange C. How big is his stack size?
Very small.
It doesn't really matter if you've been 3-betting tons when he has that stack size.
Yeah.
We just get to put pressure on. We just get to keep putting pressure on. And if we've got good spots to do it, we don't want to let up when there's such a short stack. Unless, like, if we keep doing it and someone keeps playing back at us, fine.
Yeah.
We just have to, like, accept that, you know, we're just going to have to take them to value town instead of bluffing them. This isn't even a bluff. This is more like a, I guess you'd call it like a semi-bluff pre-flop.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing from the small blind here when we 3-bet is usually going more linear. So that involves just taking like the top of our range, expanding it a bit and 3-betting all those hands, as opposed to playing like a big blind range where we're 3-betting very polarized. Because we want to be flat calling like hands like 10-7 suited. We don't want to be 3-betting that, whereas we'd like to be 3-betting like 6-4 suited. So yeah, I don't think the call is bad, but I kind of prefer a 3-bet.
Yeah.
Especially in spots where we can put pressure on. And yeah, I mean, when you 3-bet, this is the kind of board that we bet and take it down at a much higher frequency than our opponent, even though he can have like 6-5 of clubs here. King 9 offsuit against the table that is playing pretty tight, which I felt like this table wasn't taking advantage of stack size manipulation and stuff like that as they should have been, which is fairly normal for like a low stakes tournament. I felt like that was a good blocker hand to open. Ace Jack off. Let's see what happens with this. So we just end up calling here as well, which I think is fine if he's going to play back at our 3-bets and he's putting ICM pressure on. Then 3-betting a hand like Ace Jack off here makes no sense. He bets, we call, and he bets pretty big on the king. Like if I was playing just full chip EV, I'd almost be calling here again because it's such a good card for his range, the king. Or it's not such a good card for his range. It's such a good card for him to barrel. Because, like, what do we do with 5x? What do we do with 2x? So I almost feel like we should just be calling him down with Ace Jack. But I also feel like there's better spots to pick up chips here. And I can't remember whether it's the end of the last video, I was saying, like, the way you don't want to be playing at final tables with ICM pressure is making, like, hero calls and stuff like that. So yeah, fold is fine. But I just feel like I don't want to fold there. Okay, Jack 10 off. We limp call, which I'm okay against. If the big blind in this spot is pretty tight, I would just open. I don't think there's too much point in limping when we get that immediate fold equity. He starts betting big, and I think I had a cheeky look at his stats as well in this spot, and he was very tight. So, as played, I think when he bombs the turn, it feels nasty, but I agree with what you did. And the reason I agree with what you did is that when really tight players show up here with massive bets, like, his range just crushes top pair jack kicker here. It just absolutely crushes, and this is where you can play really exploitably versus these opponents. Like, if they're not going to be betting, you know, okay, occasionally they're going to have a spade draw here or something like that, or a diamond draw, but not that often. I don't think he makes it 4 big blinds with ace king offsuit on this flop. So yeah, I actually agree with the fold here, and it's kind of tight, but like, what do we do on any river? He's going to jam most rivers when he's bet this big. So this is like really exploitable, but versus some players, that's just how you got to play. against pretty much every player in these Zoom tournaments. You want to be playing exploitably. You want to know how to play correctly, but then you want to alter it and play exploitably. So yeah, I actually agree with the fold here.
If I think he's the kind of player who just wants to like use his stack advantage to just like bully me and hammer away, I'm just like closing my eyes and just call.
Yeah.
But if I feel like he has not really gotten out of line and he has been playing like pretty tight, and then
I think I'd been looking through all the hands and just tagging the hands that we're gonna watch in this video, but like I don't think I'd actually seen him play a hand so far. Out of like 4 or 5 orbits, he probably had played like maybe 1 or 2, but I don't think I'd seen him do anything. So when someone like that just starts massively betting, they usually have it. Okay, Queen Jack suited here. We bet pretty big, and he calls. Do you ever consider a jam here? I think perhaps this isn't the spot to do it with ICM and the 7 big blind stack. But if you're playing not at a final table, just like playing chip EV, do you ever consider a jam here?
I would maybe consider it if I had like... I've thought about it but mainly if I'm out of position and I have, let's say, just 24 big blinds here or something like that, and then maybe I have like ace king or maybe aces or something, and then of course I need to jam other to be balanced. But mainly if I don't think he's folding a king here to my to 2x pot jam, then I would like to like jam aces. Or
do you think he just check calls all his kings on this flop? I think he check raises.
I think the kings, like, the kings he has, I usually like maybe king 10, maybe king 8 or something, and I think he's just check calling them. I don't think he's raising them. The kings he's raising is 2 pair kings, so I don't think
if he never check raises a king here, which is a mistake, then I think not jamming makes more sense, because his range is better, because he has all the top pairs left in his range. If he's not check raising his king X here, he's massively exploitable when he does check raise, because you'll either figure out that he's way too bluff heavy or way too value heavy. Because if he's not check raising his top pair hands here, it's either always 2 pair plus, or it's a lot of bluffs. Because like he just doesn't have that many hands that he can have that aren't top pairs here for value. King 9, King 4, 9-4 suited, not really going to be calling that too often, I guess. If he's not check raising a king on this flop, he's probably not calling 9-4 suited pre-flop. So yeah, I think in game it makes more sense just to check and take our equity here. Yeah. But this is definitely a spot where versus certain opponents an overbet jam here makes a lot of sense. Because we get him to fold everything except top pair, and even against top pair we have decent equity. And then we can also do it with stuff that doesn't block the king. So like if I had somehow 4-3 suited or pocket 4s, stuff like that, we can get some really decent value and a lot of protection as well. You might not think that you need protection with pocket 4s, but we have 2 flush draws plus multiple straight draws available on the board, so having some protection against those is pretty decent. So yeah, it's not the worst spot to be 2x potting the turn. However, with the ICM considerations, I think just checking behind and taking value. And
the reason I'm not betting like 8 big blinds here or something, or 7 big blinds or whatever to barrel with this very good like with my very good equity, is that if I bet 7 or 8 big blinds here and he jams, I have to fold so much equity.
Yeah. I think that's something that actually it's a really good point to bring up, because it's something that a lot of people miss. And you can almost do this just as a feeling in yourself. If you're on the turn or even on the flop and you feel like if you bet this hand and he raises, you're going to have to fold and feel really sick about it, just check.
Yeah.
Because usually when you get that feeling, it means that you have decent showdown equity that you don't want to get bluffed off, or a really decent draw that is going to come in 30% of the time or whatever. Plus you have bluffing equity on the river, and if you get check raised, you're going to have to fold yourself off that equity. Then just check behind. And it's a mistake that people make over and over again. It's just like, well, I have this really decent draw, so I should bet, and then they get shoved on, and they're like, oh, why did I do that?
Yeah, I would much prefer betting with, say, Jack Queen offsuit here.
Yeah,
where I'm like, if I bet 7 or 8 big blinds, I can fold out his nines, maybe his fours.
Yeah.
Maybe he has sevens or something that he's
Ace-7 with the ace of clubs.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. You game by folding that stuff out.
Yeah. And if he jams, I'm just like, all right, fine. I'm not losing that much equity.
I agree. The other problem I have in this hand is he checks 3 times. Let's get some value out of his 9x.
Yeah.
It just bet 4 big blinds here. And this is a spot because you check turn. He's never checking twice with a set or 2 pair here or anything like that. He's just going to bet the river for value.
Yeah.
So just bet 4 or 5 big blinds here.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. Okay, ace jack off. We fold.
Can we see what did he have?
Yeah. Let's have a look.
You had 9s or what?
6-9.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, he's going to call.
Yeah.
Does he want to check raise that flop? I think he's got enough equity to just check call that flop. I think his play was fine. Ace jack offsuit. Quite like a 3-bet. Could also call. It's kind of difficult with the C blue orange C. Yeah. So folding, it would depend on if this guy was tight. So I would be, if you're at a final table, hopefully you will have been noticing who's playing aggro, who's playing tight. If this guy is playing really aggro, we probably just want to be flat calling here. Just because we're going to dominate so many of his hands, we're going to be able to make so many profitable cooldowns versus him. And no one behind us is taking advantage. If everyone behind us is if the small blind in this hand or the big blind in this hand, if they're 3-betting and squeezing tons and really taking advantage of ICM, then, we naturally have to just tighten massively up. But I don't think everyone was at this table, so I'm fine with just flat calling here versus a very wide range. If he's tight, I can just fold it then. But yeah, these are things that you really need to be noticing at the final table. Here again, I think versus this tight player, we just want to be opening instead of limping.
Yeah.
He bets 3. If we've tagged him as being pretty tight, I could almost just fold because it's going to be difficult to play on later streets. Because we never get to bet, and this is what happens a lot, is it goes check, check, turn, and then he realizes, okay, well, he's checked 3 times, he's not going to check an ace 3 times, so I get to bluff at a very high rate here, even if he's a tight player. I think raise pre-flop anyway versus this player makes more sense. And so exploitably again, we can just fold here because he has way more ace-x in his range than most people I think would. If he is a tight player when he raises. Okay, king queen off, we open. So here's a spot where I think we can make an exploitable fold.
Okay.
We call. However, when we went into the final table, I looked at the small blinds 3-bet range here, and you had or you or I had about 175 hands on him. His 3-bet range was 2%.
Yeah. And if I could see that, I would probably also just fold.
Yeah, but if you'd noticed at the final table, I don't think he did very much 3-betting at the final table at all.
Yeah.
And I think this was like the first or the second time that he'd 3-bet at all. And he'd been the big stack the whole time where the other guy had 8 big blinds, and he wasn't 3-betting at all. And now the other guy is gone, and he's 3-betting versus you, who open off a 23 big blind stack. We're crushed here a lot. Yeah. So I think King Queen off, even though I want to puke in my mouth, folding versus this small bet, I think we just kind of say, okay, well, either he's realized his image is so tight that he gets to make these 3 bets and gets us to fold. This is pretty high up in our range. I think we just have to.
I think that maybe when you use HUDs, usually it really becomes like a crutch or something that suddenly when your HUD stops working, you're not really that good at just looking at maybe table dynamics that you would have been if you didn't have a HUD.
I think I've gone through spells in my career where I've not played with a HUD deliberately so that I take notice. Like the PokerFest main event win that I did, that I'm making a video on and run it once. I didn't play with a HUD because I just wanted to. I was going through a period where I was just trying to focus on specific things. And looking at stats in a HUD wasn't one of them. And also in massive field tournaments like that, I can't remember how many thousand players it had in it, a HUD is less efficient because you get moved table quite a lot. You don't pick up that many hands on people. So I was really just trying to focus in on not how often people are playing hands, but how they're playing hands. And that's something that you can do at a final table as well. You could almost make, and people play different at final tables, so you could take a note of people's stats when you're at a final table, and then just hide the HUD and really focus in. And even if you're playing this is something that people probably don't do enough, especially at the lower stakes, is if you make a final table, stop regging. If you're a player who plays a fair few tables...
Stop what?
Stop regging.
As a registering to new tournaments or what? Yeah.
If you usually play 8 tournaments, one of your early tournaments you make a final table, but then I want to be playing in the big 22 and stuff. All that stuff can wait. Where you're going to make the most money in poker is in MTTs is playing correctly at the final table. Because each pay jump, each step is much, much bigger than any other stage of the tournament. So if you're the perfect player up to 9 players left, but then aren't good at a final table, you're not going to be a particularly winning player. Whereas if you really know how to play final tables, that's where you're going to make the most money. And really focusing in on how people are playing at a final table is massively important. So if you drop, say you're down to 5 tables and that's easy for you, and you've got your final table up, it's much better to do that than keep registering for tournaments where your ROI comes from making the most of the final table, not from playing those 3 extra tournaments that are going to actually take your focus away from the final table. And it's something that I don't think people do enough. And I think had you really focused on this final table, you might have been able to make this fold. And I think you probably were really focused on the final table. I'm not saying you weren't, but had you noticed this player's tendencies, I think this is a fold that you can make. We just kind of have to fold this flop anyway. Okay, ace-6 off. We call. I think he was opening enough for us to jam this. So he wasn't 3-betting much, but I think he was opening enough for us to jam it. And the reason is that we're just playing chip EV here. And these Ace-X offsuit hands, they play pretty poorly out of position. Because if you think that he's not opening wide enough for us to shove here, then do you think he's opening wide enough for us to just check get it in when an ace flop?
No.
So it's like, if he's not opening wide enough for us to shove, I'm almost like inclined just to fold instead of call, because it's going to be so difficult for us to realize our equity if we think he's that tight that we're not able to check shove or check raise get it in when an ace flops. But yeah, I mean, he's opening from the cutoff. I'm pretty sure he's opening wide enough that we can just get it in. So yeah, I kind of don't like the call there. I much prefer a rejam. 10-8 offsuit. We call. Oh, I remember this hand. Okay, so it goes check check, and the 2 comes. Like when he checks back here, what do you expect him to have?
He could have some. He could maybe have like 9s that he wants to point control with. He could have. He could also have some maybe ace jack that he doesn't want to get blown off his equity.
So basically, like he has a medium strength hand that he doesn't particularly want to get check raised with. Do you think he's going to call a bet at a high frequency? Like if we make it like half pot, 40% half pot, do you think he's going to call that bet pretty frequently?
I guess not.
I think he probably does. Like most people, when they're checking back in this position, they'll get rid of their pure bluff on the flop. So usually when they check back, they have something. And I think he has enough just check that, well, one, like, there's pretty much nothing that he can be slow playing, so we're pretty much always ahead here. How do we get stacks in by the river?
We bet.
Yeah, if we check raise, like, because I imagine that was your intention when you check it, is to check raise.
Yeah.
Is he getting his stack in when he checks back flop?
Yeah, probably not.
No. So the best way to get all our money in the middle here is to like 40% half pot and then just jam the river. Yeah. I'd prefer to see you jam here than check. Because you could jam here with a multitude of bluffs.
Yeah.
Like you can have Jack 9, you can have 9-7, you can have diamond draws, you can have 3-4 suited, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Checking here, like you just want to be putting money in. When you have the best hand, don't slow play so much, like especially in these kind of spots.
Yeah.
Just don't slow play. Just try and get the value. And then the river, like we don't even bet the river. He doesn't have a diamond draw. He hits that king pretty often.
Yeah.
So I would probably bet like 3.5, 4 big blinds here. And I think he calls at a high enough frequency. Like he's going to do a lot of folding. Because he's clearly shown that he's.
Yeah.
But the way that we make our money here is bet. So bet turn, bet river. Okay. King 5.
What did he have?
Oh, hang on. He had ace-6. So, yeah, I mean, he's probably folding that, but, you know, he could easily call it.
It's weird that he doesn't bet the flop with this ace-6.
I think it's actually an alright check back. Okay. The reason why it's an alright check back is, like, he has backdoor equity with the ace of diamonds, but his backdoor equity is really under-realized when this is a spot where you check shove any 5, any 8, any 10 usually, any draw. So he doesn't get to realise that backdoor equity by betting very often, because how it goes is check shove instead of check call pretty often.
I think on the river, like I like. I should probably just bet. I think on the river, like, so if he has a king, then he's probably gonna bet, and then I can shove, and he's probably gonna call. If he doesn't have a king, like, he might very well bluff with ace-6 here. Bluff, like, the king is just.
I doubt he bluffs ace-6 ever, and that's the problem when he checks back. His range is more like 5x, 8x.
That's true.
What you got to do is join up the dots from pre-flop to flop. To turn to river. Yeah. And when he checks flop, like, he's saying, I don't want to get all my money in, which probably means that he has like weak ace-x or worse in general.
Yeah.
You know, in some spots, so you could say, okay, he might have like top set or something like that, but we have the 10-8, so it's unlikely he has that. So yeah. And if we're not betting 10-8 here, just from a theory point of view, like, when we do start betting, we're so bluff heavy that people could theoretically exploit us pretty hard. Okay. King 5 suited, I think, we're just jamming. It's a pretty easy jam versus his stack size. We don't have to take ICM into consideration because we're less than half the stack of the next biggest guy. Ace-7 off. This is a spot where I think you can consider jamming. However, if this is out of the ordinary for this player, which I think it was, I think we just fold and say we don't know what we're doing and we don't want to take this risk at a final table. But if this is a habitual limper, so he's limping tons, then Ace-7, I think, becomes a jam here. Okay, pocket kings. We jam, get called. And the reason I brought this hand up is in the last video we had a hand where we re-jammed ace-6 offsuit, and I was saying it's a definite jam. And we did the ICM calculation. So if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch number 7. And the reason why I put his calling range so wide in that, I think I had him opening 48% and calling 32%, which is just crazy, is because of this hand. I saw this hand and I was like, oh, okay, he can actually be calling 7-6 suited. You know, you haven't 3-bet shoved against him like ever. Why is he calling 6-7 suited? It's just you know, there's not even any bounties or anything in this tournament. But you do come across players like that who are just like, oh, I've raised, I'm not folding. So that's why I did kind of the worst case scenario. And what I wanted to say was, like, the fact that he's calling 7-6 suited doesn't mean that ace-6 offsuit then becomes a fold. Because the hands that he's calling, ace-6 offsuit actually does really well in a showdown situation. Because if he's calling 7-6 suited, he's probably calling like every ace, a lot of king X, like he's not folding any king suited. He's calling tons of broadways, he's calling all these suited connectors. So his range is so wide that ace-6, having the ace, actually makes a big difference, and we're just going to win with ace high a ton versus him. So that was just a point that I wanted to make up. Just because someone's calling range is pretty wide doesn't mean that those ace-x reshoves are bad. Like, shoving a hand like 8-9 suited might actually be bad versus this player, because he's not folding like queen-9 off. If you can't get him to fold queen-9 off, why shove 8-9 suited? So this is like, it's pretty bad if you didn't take a note on this hand of this player, because if he can do this at a final table, he's definitely doing it when you're not at a final table. So okay, 7s. I think we just call. Goes check, check. Do you ever think about leading here?
Yeah, I think leading makes sense. Since the flop is just really, really good for my range. Yeah.
So, I think with ICM pressure, I don't think you get to lead flop too often.
No.
I think he can put a lot of pressure on you.
Mm.
And also, his range is still pretty strong. He has all the overpairs in it. Whereas when he checks behind, like, is he checking pocket eights plus here?
Nope.
Nope. So the king is really good for his range.
Yeah.
Technically, it's not that great. The ace is better. He's going to have more ace-x checkbacks than king-x.
Mm.
But it looks really strong for his range. He still has a ton of 2-overs here, like ace-10 off, maybe 10-jack stuff that he doesn't bet or something like that. Mm. So I think sevens actually gain a lot by a protection bet here of like anything between like 35 to 50% pot. Yeah. I think makes a lot of sense because he doesn't seem like the kind of player who's just gonna, say, well, I have more king X, I'm gonna raise this king, and there's not much he can do about it. We have a heart blocker, so even if he did have like backdoor hearts, it's less now. And yeah, we just get him to fold any 2-overs. Getting him to fold 6 outs is great here. Plus, when he checks back here, he can easily have like ace-4 suited, ace-2 suited. So yeah, a bet here makes a lot of sense. Not on the flop, but on the turn. And we're not going to face so much of this bet. Yeah, and he does just have the ace-jack. And getting him to fold that hand, or getting some slight value out. We'd actually prefer him to call with the ace-jack. It's fine, He has 6 outs, but we've got him to put in money. Yeah, I think you work through this hand. It makes sense to bet with how he played it.
Yeah.
10-9 suited. Yeah, I think we just have to call in this hand. And now what?
I think this is just a call with ICM, and I think it's just.
I actually think we have so much equity that this is a check raise. Pretty vulnerable hand in that we have top pair, but we have so much equity versus anything that he has. That yes, it sucks. Like even against his flush draws, we're doing amazingly well.
Yeah.
I hate it if he shows up with, like, even if he has like ace-10, which he's not going to fold, we still have a ton of equity. So I wonder if it'll show it on here. You can't actually see that. I'm just going to check how much equity we have versus ace-10. Okay, on that board. Like, we still have 44% equity on that board.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's versus, like, almost the top of where he can have 3s and 4s.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have so much equity here. We also have so much fold equity that I think we just want to be, even with ICM, we want to be check raising and getting in. And what we got to realize here is that, like, yes, he's the guy that called with 6-7 suited, but we also have a pretty big stack now. Like, he's not going to fuck around with us too much. And even if he does, like, this is a hand, but we're not folding. So, check raising, I think, makes the most sense. The problem I have with check calling is that, like, whilst we have a ton of equity now, there's so many turns that turn our hand into, like, a bluff catcher.
Yeah.
That I just prefer keeping it simple. I'd kind of like to see a small bet on the turn because it's going to go check so much. So when these when the board changes drastically like this, making small bets makes a fair amount of sense with a lot of hands. So we want to make it with the good hands that we have to get some value, especially in spots where it's going to go check so often. And we also want to be making it with some bluffs, like had we had like somehow shown up here with ace jack with the ace of clubs or something like that. I don't mind making a small bet. And also if we have like a hand like 10 jack off that is not, it's not good enough to make a big bet with, but could do with getting some value and protection. Like if we bet small here with 10 jack off, and he has ace 8 with the ace of, or ace 8 with the 8 of clubs or something like that, we get a small bit of value here. So there's just a lot of benefits from betting small on this.
So are we just betting like 1/3 pot here?
Yeah, I would bet like no bigger than 5 big blinds.
Yeah.
So yeah, something like that. And then the check again. I'm not sure what you're trying to achieve by checking again. It's kind of the same as the 10-8 hand.
Yeah,
we just need to be betting for value.
Like, I feel like here that, so I block his tens. I block possibly 9. I have the flush draw. So it's just.
Do you think he could have aces here?
Yes, he could have aces.
Do you think he's going to call a 2/3 pot with aces?
Yes. So he will have some aces, some overpairs, but I think he's also going to have a lot of air right now.
And do you think he's always going to bluff? Like, say he has a 4, a 5, a 3, a 9. Do you think he's going to bluff that? Say he has ace high. Do you think he's going to bluff that?
He might, but like if he had aces here, he might very well like value bet here.
Yeah, sure. So we can get in a check raise, but that's versus the very top of his range. And how much do you think he's going to value bet? Do you think he's going to value bet like half pot, 2/3, a pot size bet?
Just like half pot, I think.
So if we bet 2/3 pot here, we probably get more value from that kind of hand. I don't think he's gonna bluff. He's just not gonna have that many bluffs in this spot. I don't think. I think he's gonna have way more value, like mediocre hands, like 10 jack, like pocket 8s that he might make a crying call with for some reason, because like he called with the 6-7 suited pre-flop. Do you not think post-flop he could like show up with 9-7 here and just say, right, well, I hit the river, I'm not folding?
Yeah, I might be trying to get like a bit too fancy when I have.
I think you are. I think like when you have 2-pair plus type hands, you just want to start getting value from them, because trying to slow play them, what happens is you're trying to get 2 bets out of them, and what you do when you aim for a check raise is you strengthen your range so much, especially on the river, that like people can hero fold easily versus you. One thing that people don't do enough in MTTs in general is check raise bluff river, and people know that. People know that like when you get check raised on the river, it's never a bluff. So like, why are you trying to get value that way? He's just going to bet and then he's going to fold. Whereas he would have called the bet anyway with most of his value. Plus you get those like, so you lose the bluffs, but you gain the 2/3 pot versus his like 9x hands, pocket 8s, weak 10x that he's going to check behind. So take the guaranteed value, and what did you show up with? Ace 4. So like, this is a player who I could see hero calling with that for no particular reason. Okay, right. Ace 4 suited. Yeah, versus him, we're just jamming. I would just jam the ace 4 suited there. It's an okay flat. It's not great. When everyone checks to you, you smash this range. I would actually make a small bet here, like a 3 big blind bet here, and it's going to work a lot versus these 2 players. We just have to fold. 6-9 offsuit. I think we can just fold here. Do we want to fold? I mean, I don't mind it, but yeah. And on the river, I almost feel like we can value bet.
Yeah.
So we have second pair. His most likely holding, since he didn't
Sevens.
like, if he is 9x or better, he's going to raise flop a lot. His most likely holding here is like 7x. We actually block the straight now of with the 6. Not too worried about him having like 6-8 or something like that. So yeah, I think we just value bet, and he does show up with the 7, and we get some value.
It just sucks seeing him have a 7 there and not value betting. Like you're just like kicking
It's
this
just
up.
like, it's because and it's the same problem that a lot of lower stakes players have, is like it looks like you have a really shit hand, but heads up, second pair, even with a crap kicker, when the action has gone how it's gone, it's a decent value bet. Okay, ace king, we jam, and we're gone.
GG.
Yeah. So overall, I think you played like pretty well. There was just like a few spots where we're not being aggressive enough, I think. And I think you're overestimating ICM a little bit too much with rejamming. ICM spots that you really want to avoid are like when there's 2 stacks of 10 big blinds, and you don't want to get into like 3-bet jamming marginal hands when you've got like 25 big blinds in that kind of spot. But you know, when you're the shortest stack at the table, button opens and you've got a6 off in 20 big blinds, and he opens off, you got to keep picking up those chips.
Yeah.
Thanks for submitting the hand history, and
thanks for going through them with me. And also I should probably like not play too fancy when I have just, like a value hand.
Just try and like keep it simple and get the value. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone, and see you all on Run It Once. Bye.